From the eponymous Joe Malone to what Sarah Blakely indecorously called the billion-dollar butt at Spanx. From Jacqueline Gold's Ann Summers to Whitney Wolfe Heard's phenomenal Bumble, the new phenomenon. Anita Roddick, Linda McCartney, Martha Fox, Coco Chanel. It's these women and many, many more like them who've been brought together in one amazing place to inspire the next generation of marketers, women and men. So hello and welcome to Wonder Women, the second in our series of webinars designed to get under the skin of the drivers, the diversions, the barriers, glass or otherwise, and above all, the huge opportunities for women in today's accelerated marketing industry. My name is David Mayo. I am a Marketing Society Asia board member. I'm also the COO of ADNA, Creative Intelligence, and it's a true privilege to be joined today by two authors and two panelists who together will share their views on what it takes to succeed as a woman in the rapidly changing world of marketing today. How they did what they did, how they do what they do, and critically, how their journeys and experiences can serve to inspire and motivate other women and men, both in marketing and beyond. Before we get started, I want to explain just how today is going to work. We will have a great, I'm sure, discussion with the authors of the book Wonder Woman, and then I will also have a conversation with two wonderful marketing leaders who I will introduce shortly. We'll then hear about the future of marketing for women before we open up the floor to audience Q&A. So please contribute, please feel free to join in, please feel free to leave messages. Please direct any questions to the Q&A function that you can see here on your screen throughout this session. We'll do our best to get to them as far as we possibly can. If not, we'll get back to you afterwards. And we also encourage you to use the chat box throughout to share questions, reactions, and thoughts as we build on those in the discussions. So I'm going to ask everyone that's just tuned in one question to begin with, and I'm going to tell you about mine while you're making up your mind. But who is your Wonder Woman? Who is your Wonder Woman? I admire a great many women. Yeah, there are go-tos like Kamala Harris, there's Michelle Obama, there's Jane Austen, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Then there are the sports stars, the business stars, and the list just goes on and on and on. But I don't have personally a specific Wonder Woman myself, other than Mrs. Mayo, of course. I spend my days in awe of many women that I work with, and I see them testing themselves and their teams to the absolute limits on a daily basis. They teach empathy, they teach resilience, they teach intuition, and they teach collaboration. And it's not that men can't also be like that, by the way, but I do feel that if more women were in charge, there would probably be a lot less strife in the world. Anyway, give me any of your answers to that question that you have. But in the meantime, we'll get on with it. And first of all, I'd like you to meet the authors of Wonder Women, which launched on March the 4th, ahead of International Women's Day, which was the 8th of March, as you'll probably remember. The book was expressly designed to deliver in three specific areas. Firstly, to create awareness and celebrate women's success stories in the world of marketing specifically. Secondly, to inspire other women and men with stories and thoughts of successful women, to encourage marketers to adopt what the authors believe are the more feminine aspects of thinking and doing. And again, this is not a gender specific theme. When we say feminine aspects, Giles, I'm sure, will embellish upon those. But the third theme was to encourage all women in marketing at all stages in their journey to grow in confidence, to grow their talent, and to grow as individuals. So first of all, please welcome Katie Messino and Giles Lurie, who are our authors. Welcome to you both. Hello. And let me just start with you, Giles, if I may. Okay, you've worked in advertising, you've worked in market research, packaging design, corporate identity, and then obviously most extensively and most recently in brand consultancy. And your specialist subjects, in your own words, are brand positioning and innovation, and the book is absolutely no exception. But I will have to introduce you and say things that you yourself would not be able to say. You're an accomplished author of several books. including The Prisoner and the Penguin. You also wrote How Coca-Cola Took Over the World, and the sagaciously titled 75 Marketing Tales to Help You Find the Next Big Thing. I'm on number 68 at the moment. As if to underline this currency, Giles is also a VW Beetle driving, Lego watch wearing, Disney loving, Chelsea supporting director of the brand consultancy, The Value Engineers. And we're very, very pleased to have you here with us today, Giles. Let me ask you, first of all, what inspired you to write Wonder Women? What was the inspiration behind the book?
Whether it was an inspiration or just somebody I would blame. I was having a conversation with one of my sons, who is actually a singer-songwriter for a Americana band called the Blue Highways. And he'd written a song all about a man who has lost his partner and can't get past it. And it's called What's a Man to Do? And it's written from a very male perspective. And we were having a conversation about writing. And I was saying, had he written many songs from a female perspective? And we had a really interesting discussion about that. And then he flipped it to me and he said, you know, you write all those brand stories down. I said, yeah. He said, how many have you written? And I said, probably written about 200 or 300 now. He said, how many of them have a woman as the lead protagonist? And I went, I don't know. And so of course, I had to go and find out. And I was shocked to find out that it was only around 15 to 20%. So somewhere in the sort of 35, 40 out of the 200 that I had written. And I felt so embarrassed. I thought, I've got to put this right. So I said, my next book is going to be a book of stories, but every time I'm going to find a woman who's done something amazing in marketing. And so I started writing those. And as I started collecting those, I thought, I was talking about the female perspective. I need to bring that in as well. How am I going to do that? And luckily for me, Katie, who I knew and had worked with quite a lot, didn't run away when I mentioned that she perhaps would be interested in co-authoring with me, and she agreed to come along and join the journey. And so together we sat down and talked about it. And that's where the book started to evolve. So it evolved from just a book of stories, which obviously just referenced a number of. But Katie, whose background is much more market research and insight, said, we should talk to some women who are in the business now as well. Yeah. And so we built out the second section and we interviewed, I think it's 19, 20 women from different generations to get their viewpoints on it as well.
It's a remarkable story, Giles.
Conclusions. Sorry?
Yeah, it's a remarkable story and it's a remarkable look. Here is my copy right here, as if, which arrived very recently with a, and thank you, Katie, yours, with a very nice salutation from the authors in there as well. But I think just extending this particular theme, Giles, I mean, you and Katie have been emphatic about this. It's not just a book sort of for and about women, is it? It's there are themes in there that affect everybody.
I think, you know, so without trying to sound glib, you know, women's issues aren't just for women, they're for business. There is so much data out there that says businesses that adopt a more holistic and diverse leadership style actually succeed more. And we're passionate about doing that and actually championing it, celebrating it, encouraging it. We're not saying that women are better than men. There are some great men marketeers out there. But if you can combine characteristics that traditionally have been called male and female together, then actually you get probably the best of modern marketing leadership.
Yeah, and I've just before I go on to the next question, we've just had some responses to who is your Wonder Woman. My mum and my gran, says Kylie Prankart, from the Marketing Society itself. But Danielle Francisa comes in with, it's me. And, and then this is very good. I think self-belief and you know, self-motivation is a massive theme that's going to start to come out today, Danielle. So you're very much in the zeitgeist of the conversation. Giles, back to you. You know, what has been the response since you launched the book? I mean, it's been less than 2 months, but it seems to be all over everything as far as I can see.
It's been very good. We've it's probably given Katie and I a platform to really go out there and talk that. So we've done a number of seminars, we've got more planned. But I think the other thing that it has done is it has encouraged some of the women that we talk to, some of the stories we talk to also do a little bit of self-publicity. And it's amazing the amount of positivity that they get. So some of the people we've interviewed, we sent copies to as well. They put it up on LinkedIn, and the number of likes and celebrations and "you deserve it, girl" and all of this that they get is absolutely fabulous. And it's like we've dropped a pebble and you can see the ripples spreading out from that. And it's a lovely feeling in terms of going, that's what we wanted to generate. We wanted to get that conversation going. We wanted to get people thinking about some of the issues. And there are still issues that we want to go on and pursue and talk about. We're really passionate about what is the future for, you know, for parenthood and motherhood in particular, for marketeers. We think is a really important issue going forward. We think there is still some unconscious bias that needs addressing and needs to be, you know, thought about and ways of developing. And the roles of things like women mentoring and working from home. There are so many other issues that we'd like to get out there and get people talking about.
Yeah, no, well, and it's very true. And I have to say, you weren't scrimping on those references that you were talking about. I mean, the Queen of Tupperware, Brownie Wise, the research business, as I said earlier, Bumble, Benefit, Goldie Box, The Honest Company, Billy. I mean, the list just goes, Burberry, the list, De Beers, the list goes on, Lakeland, it goes on and on and on. I mean, there really are some excellent references in there, and the stories from each of them, I just find them very, very open. They are very surprisingly honest, more honest than you would ordinarily have expected them to be in a business book.
We also wanted to try and make sure that they were not too long. So, you know, we had a sort of rule of thumb that none of them should go over 1,000 words. Ideally, they should be between 500 and 750 words each, so that you can just dip in, read a story, put the book down or whatever in terms of however you want to do it. So hopefully it's an accessible book too. So it's a very easy to read book.
It's very dippable, with a foreword from Edwina Dunn, OBE, which is very good. So thank you very much for that. Katie, I'm going to leave you just on the screen if you don't mind. I'm going to bookend our panelists now. Just before I go to them, thank you very much to Linda Tan, who said there are too many Wonder Women in the world. Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, Mother Teresa, and Mel Robbins. So there's 4 more to add to our list of who you think a Wonder Woman is. Now meet the panelists. You've met the authors, and here are 2 completely remarkable marketing leaders, and it's a true privilege for me to introduce you to 2 people. First is Pek Lian Yap, who is the head of global brand category revenue management and market intelligence at Petronas Lubricants International. We'll come back to her in just one moment. And I'm also going to introduce you to Barbara Baum-Bainans, who is a senior marketing consultant with a background that will be the envy of certainly many on this call. Firstly, Pek Lian. She's now based in Italy, although lockdown has meant that she's hanging out, camping out, hiding out. I don't know what the right expression is, back in Malaysia. Pek Lian is the second of 3 children who grew up in a mining town in Ipoh, which is in Perak province in Malaysia. And over 20 years as a marketer, life has taken her from the black stuff all the way back to the black stuff as that head of global brand category management at the lubricants, at Petronas Lubricants International. Pek Lian is a strategic and creative thinker, what I would call a whole brain thinker. She has bags of marketing and sales experience in the FMCG area, the very, very highly fluid internet industry, and of course downstream auto oil industry. She also lectures, she trains marketing, advertising and branding, and she also knows about psychological typing. And we can find out more about that, Pek Lian, next time we speak. But I also want people to know that you are a Bachelor of Economics, that you studied marketing strategy at Harvard Business School, and you have an MBA from the University of Nottingham. We spent a lot of time together recently, and we keep coming back to this theme that sort of, it seems to be a theme that is, you know, regurgitating itself and coming back again and again to us both. But let me ask you, Pek Lian, just to kick off, do you see yourself as a woman or a marketer?
So thanks, David, for the wonderful introduction. And firstly, I'm really honored to be on this panel. And thanks, Giles, for inviting me. To your question, and you know, we had a little bit of chat before this, right? When you asked me that question, I was actually quite stumped because I never thought of myself as a woman doing marketing. So gender doesn't even come into the equation. So for me, I'm a marketer first, full stop, and that's that.
And there have been moments along the way where people have tried to remind you, though, aren't there? You were telling me a story about how you'd been in a meeting in Italy one day in quite a sort of male environment, and I don't mean the industry or the culture. Do you want to tell us about that?
Okay, I think it's not so much in Italy. I think in one of my previous experience, when I first joined the lubricant industry, well, was in FMCG for a long while. So when I first joined the lubricant industry, you know, it's really male oriented. And I was quite shocked because, you know, we had to do an event where we were trying to educate people about engine oil. You know, engine oil, women, you know, how do I educate people on engine oil? Yeah. And I think the first thing I was told was that, you know, I need to hire brand ambassadors. And the measure of the brand ambassador was how pretty she is, how sexy she is. I was really shocked. I mean, it was a cultural shock for me because, you know, in the previous industries that I was in, you know, we don't use sex or we don't use gender to sell, you know. So it was quite an eye-opener for me. But then I had to take a step back and I had to think to myself, well, if I look at the true marketer from that perspective, understanding my target audience, which is a little bit more male oriented, what exactly, you know, would you know, what's the hook to bring them in before you educate them? And then inevitably it comes back to, yeah, in this industry, maybe it's a little bit about that, right? It's a bit of a struggle for me, but at the end of the day, it's more about really, it's not about selling, you know, using sex to sell, but trying to attract people to come in, but then get women who's able to articulate the brand or the brand message or how the whole thing works. So that's how I got around it. But it was, I can tell you, that was a real cultural shock for me. Yeah.
And let me ask you, I mean, you know, you're Asian, and, you know, Asia on the grand scale of things is quite a patriarchal place, although there is a huge respect for women and the strength of women and the role of women, but it's quite segmented. Has the fact that you are Asian helped, hindered? Has it been a factor as part of what you've been doing in the past?
Okay, so that's quite interesting. I have never in my entire life felt that I was disadvantaged because I'm a woman, all right? I do think that the fact of my interest or who I am, for instance, right? If you want to get to some of the leaders in the organization, obviously they're very male oriented, and there will be male talk, and there will be, you know, smoke breaks and things like that. I'm not a smoker. I won't be able to get down to talk to them and to, you know, rub shoulders with them. I had to find a different way. So I think the point for me was that I have never felt hindered in my career, but I also recognize that there are things I need to do, as in, you know, find different ways to close the gap of the things I'm not able to do, to get to know people, to influence them using different platforms. So I think that once you take a step back from always thinking that is this a disadvantage or an advantage, you know, it does help you to find solutions. Yeah. And so it's not really, yeah, but I do recognize there are societies, for instance, maybe Korean society or Japanese society where things like this are more prevalent than, let's say, in Malaysia or Singapore.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. And thank you also to Jennifer Chong, who said, well done, Pek Lian, gender should not be the first consideration, and how absolutely right you are. Listen, thank you for that. I'm going to bring in Barbara now. Barbara Baum-Vainans had a very simple name before she got married, as we were talking about just before we went live. Barbara, welcome to you. Barbara has also started working with us at ADNA, Creative Intelligence, so I'm very pleased to welcome her on that count as well. But in speaking to this particular person, you will notice a passionate and entrepreneurial marketer. She's got huge experience in international marketing management. And she says she's inspired at everything that happens at China speed. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But you have a very innovative mindset, Barbara. You know how to support organizations. You are a process person. You're very good at reframing things, looking at things from a spherical perspective. But more than anything, you're brilliant at sort of building and motivating teams, as we can see from your very, very extensive CV. I think most interestingly, I note that you have lived in 3 different continents whilst working for large FMCGs. You say that makes you an all-round flexible, sociable and quick starting professional with strong communication skills. I think that makes you even more interesting than that. You left the Netherlands age 28. You had a very, very comfortable job. I think you said you were working with Coca-Cola at the time. And then for no apparent reason, we haven't been able to get to the bottom of it, even in the warm-ups, you moved with your husband to Abuja in Nigeria. So my first question for you really is, with that in mind and how your career has seen you work sort of globally from that first step, you've obviously experienced a lot of very different cultures. Can you just tell us about your marketing journey and how you think that journey has shaped you today, firstly as an individual, and then secondly as a woman, please?
Thank you, David, for the kind words. And indeed, having lived in 3 different continents, that shaped myself as a person and also as a marketeer. Because obviously when you're 28 and you are going to Abuja, I actually didn't even know where Abuja was until I arrived there at the airport. And obviously everything sounded super cool, but once you arrive in Abuja, it was also a bit of a tough feeling. It's giving up your independence, and it really took also a bit of time to adjust to my new life. So after a few days, I said to myself, stop whining, make something out of this great experience. And actually, that's what I did, because when you live in Africa, you really see up close with your own eyes what is really important to people. And then I'm talking about really basic things. And that always kept a print on my eyes. And that's actually shaped me as a person. So at the time I was in Africa, I was able to get young African kids that needed serious medical needs. I got them into a European medical program organized by German surgeons. And so there were a few children that really got a new life through that. And obviously you think that's what you do as a person, but at the time we left Africa and all these kids are waving at you when you leave Nigeria, then you really, really know what a deep impression that made to me and to the rest of my life, knowing what really matters. And I think still today in my career, I always look back at that with very, very warm feelings.
Yes.
And then going from, sorry.
Yes, and that was so you do, and I know that you were very sorry to leave Abuja, but obviously, as you say, it teaches you a lot of life lessons. It's very important to understand and really respect the things that, as you say, really matter. We're going to come back to that theme in just a while, but specifically, you were given special recognition for your help that you gave to an 8-year-old girl. Is that right? There was one person in particular who benefited specifically from what you were doing there.
Yes, there was one girl called Victoria, and she had a huge tumor on her cheek. And so that was removed for her. She was an orphan, and I mean, no one wanted or could help her. And for her to, I think, for us being women, we have a bit of makeup to make us look a little younger and a little bit more awake. But when you have a huge tumor and there's not a lot that you can do. So for this girl, that she was happy and was able to look at her life with a lot of happiness, that really made a difference. And then yeah, at the end, which is not that important, but then the Rotary picked that up, that yeah, I was able to help these kids. And actually that's one of my most valuable awards I got in life.
Just the most amazing tale. And then just before we move on, there was another story that I picked up from you that did, and I think has probably shaped you, and that a lot of people certainly tuning into this webinar will relate to. But you moved subsequently, so Abuja, if that wasn't enough of a culture change stroke clash, you thought it would be a great idea to go to Iran with Unilever, and you were running the Lipton tea business there. Now, you know, the Iranian society on the outside is a patriarchal society. We know that on the inside it's a matriarchal society, but you were in a meeting once with those matriarchs, and there were men in the room. Do you want to pick that story up for us?
Yes, indeed, working in the tea business, especially in Iran, that's even more male-driven business than any other business I've seen in the world. And I met many nationalities within Unilever. There were a lot of men from Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. So being a woman right there is, well, I could say your position of a woman is really different than what I was used to in Europe. And some men just say, I'm sorry, I don't shake hands with women. And obviously it's not a personal thing, it's their culture. And so that's from the appearance, but you can do business pretty well, actually. It's just that all your working methods that worked before had to be slightly changed to be really effective and efficient in your role. And understanding and respecting the cultural values is really key to be successful. But at the same time, you have to stay focused also on your end goal. So don't lose yourself in a culture that is not that familiar and where they have different values.
Yeah, so there's a lesson to be learned though, isn't there? Which is, and you're, you know, and it's don't be set back by small things like that. Don't interpret that as because it's me. Don't take that as an affront. And I think one thing you're demonstrating brilliantly there, Barbara, is this idea that, you know, roll with the punches, you know, move on. Don't let things like that hold you back, you know. And I just want to sort of dovetail that into, again, something you were saying earlier, which is very true. You've been saying exactly the same thing. These little things, they just like nibble away. The wrong people can get wrong-footed by it. Have you ever been in a situation where you've noticed a little bit of, they call it sledging, don't they, where you're just being pecked away, but you've had to maintain course, maintain focus because you are a woman, do you think?
It's quite interesting that Barbara shared that anecdote, because I had a similar experience in Pakistan. So I was invited because we have a mega distributor there, and I had to go there to provide a talk on marketing. I was the head of Asia Pacific for Petronas then. And I was saying, like, Pakistan, are you sure you want me? Should I send another male colleague there? Because would they want to listen to me, a woman there? And my friends, my colleagues were saying, like, no, go, you know, because you're the best placed person with the most knowledge, you know, in the company to do that, you know, at that point. And really, like I said, right, I never felt like I was discriminated in that sense because my colleagues were very supportive. And I went there. And it was a whole room of men. You wouldn't believe it. Of course, you know, when you're put on the spot, you do your stuff and you never think twice about it. And then when the whole thing was over, the guys were standing up and clapping. And I was wondering, what the hell is that, you know? But I suppose maybe I'm the, you know, maybe I'm the supplier. Maybe we are providing them and supporting them in business. But it was really a great feeling. And I thought, Pakistan, you know, of all places, but it's fascinating.
There's two things. First of all, Ashish Shukla has just written to say that he celebrates women who work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year to empower and enable their children, spouses, siblings, and loved ones around them by sacrificing their own ambitions and aspirations. I think I want to just riff off that a little bit, Ashish, because it's a great point that you make, and thank you for making it. And Pek, I will come back to you in just 1 second, but Barbara, let me ask you, what single piece of advice would you give to aspiring marketing leaders?
I think I already, what I already shared a bit up front. I think you have to be able to give and take. It is, you have to appreciate other people's values. You have to, I think, I would advise people to be open-minded, to be flexible, but always stay true to yourself, because in the end, your career will be as successful as how true to yourself you are, because you can't pretend to be someone else.
Yes.
And yeah. I think it's, your career doesn't only depend on the number of marketing hours you've made. It's yes. a lot about the personality that you developed, and you don't develop your personality only within your job. There are a lot of other things out there in this world that make you who you are. So believe in yourself and be strong and have faith.
So multi-dimensional. I'm just going to drop one question, but then pick anything that you would give people to, one piece of advice in 20 seconds that you would give to aspiring marketing leaders. Liam? Sorry, you're on mute there. Sorry.
Well, I would quote Edmund Hillary. It is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. So that has been a mode that I have always lived to.
Great, thank you. That was, well, you've left me 15 seconds in hand, which gives me just enough time to introduce the second author of the book, the wonderful Katie Messino. Katie is Messino. Let me get this right. Katie is a Wonder Woman. She's the managing director of the Value Engineers. She has 30 years of experience in insight and brand strategy. She's now enjoying life of freedom and flexibility. She's speaking to us from the southwest coastal walk, where she's uphill and down dale in all weathers. But having forsaken that world of full-time work to pursue multiple activities, including writing on health and fitness and travel, she's also a small business accelerator. And my first question to Katie when I first spoke to her was around the F word. I asked her if you're a feminist. She describes herself as a feminist, but she's proud to be part of the fight for equal opportunities, equal recognition, and equal rewards for everyone. But Katie's definition, quite simply, is the shortest, sharpest description of feminism I think I've ever seen. Equal opportunities, equal recognition, and equal rewards. Thank you for joining us, Katie. Let me just start by asking you, what does the future look like now to you?
I think it looks really positive for women in marketing. In the final section of the Wonder Woman book, we talk about our thoughts and insights on what we see as the brave new world. And it's essentially, it's the conclusions and the stories from the interviews and what this means for the future. And I think we all realise that the times are changing really fast, and we really are at an exciting tipping point. And I think this is both for women and for brands. And this presents a real clear opportunity for women and for female characteristics, as Giles was talking about a little bit earlier, to play a major role in the future, which is really exciting. So if we think about how the times are changing, it's fascinating, because in the book, we started writing the book pre-COVID, and then just about the time of COVID. But we talked about the changes inspired by Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book, a very seminal book, really empowering for women. We talked about the Me Too movement, which gave women a voice, not just against harassment, but also against gender prejudices. But what we never imagined when we were writing the book was the impact of the pandemic and the acceleration of change that would bring. And I think it's sort of positive and negative change. So there is some negative change at the moment for women, but ultimately we believe we're going to come through it much stronger. So women are still changing the status quo and breaking down barriers, and they've become much more visible. They're in much more prominent positions, and many of them are feeling overwhelmed and are likely to have sacrificed their career because of the pandemic. But I've read recently that more female-founded startups have happened. In fact, they've doubled during the pandemic, and there are more Fortune 500 female CEOs than ever before. So I think women are going to be a really important part of the future going forward.
Yeah, I think, and Katie, I think that's a very good point, isn't it? I mean, with, you know, they say that 70% of buying decisions at home globally are made by women. I think one of the most interesting themes about the book, because it's written through a female lens on a female base, and rightly so, but one of the big themes is how this is also affecting men and the influence that women are having, not direct sort of like bearing down influence or anything like that, but actually the influence in the way things are working. I'm detecting from some of the stuff that I'm reading from you that, you know, it's helping men to relax, it's teaching men new things. And my point about the world being a slightly sort of less spiky place if women were in charge, you know, shouldn't be lost at this point. What do you think?
It is teaching men new things, and I think a lot of the leadership qualities nowadays that we believe are really important have become more feminine. So things like empathy, things like intuition, collaboration, communication, building teams, working together, all of the leadership qualities are probably more feminine characteristics. So it's much less about control and conquer and being in competition and wargaming, and all of that language is actually changing, and that language is changing within the context of leadership, but also in the context of marketing. We are finding, though, that it's quite hard to engage men in the conversation. They're massively supportive when you talk to them, but getting them engaged in you know, what is a real fight for equality is quite hard. Often they think, Giles wrote a piece called, they think it's all over. So men actually think, oh, well, women have got equality. It's ingrained into law now. There's nothing more that we need to do. Or because there are a couple of token women on the board, you know, or actually probably very successful women in the board, they think they've got there. They believe there's a lot of equality in the, you know, especially in the management levels in business, but they seem not to notice that there's a real gap when we get to leadership. What I do think is quite exciting, though, at the moment is that we're gathering the data now. We've got data on the gender pay gap. We've got data on the disproportionate amount of women that women are doing in the home. And we've got data on the impact that motherhood has on career progression. I think when we've got all the data, we can go there and we can actually say, look, this is the data. It's not just what women are thinking and feeling. And that will help us to affect change. So I think that's often quite shocking, and the data quite shocks people. So that's going to be massively beneficial going forward.
And Katie, you talk about, I mean, Giles did make this point. So both in the book, he's made it in an essay, he's made it on LinkedIn, he made it earlier today, the whole thing about unconscious bias.
Oh, yes.
I mean, unconscious bias, you can't see it. If you're not on your guard and you don't know what the rules of the game are, you can't notice it, you can't feel it. It's odorless, colorless. It's the worst kind of thing. How are we going to overturn, not overturn, but how are we going to address unconscious bias in the way that you described?
It's just by being aware of it. And it's not necessarily an odious thing, because people don't know that they're doing it. It's how we've been brought up. And there's so much that goes on. I think what's important is just individuals should challenge themselves, be mindful of the language that they use and the thinking that they have with regard to unconscious bias. And I think if individuals challenge themselves and actually be open about it, and apologize for making mistakes. So I do this all the time. I've got 4 boys, and they know that I'm passionate for the women's cause. And they're often just pulling me up and saying, well, Mum, that's a bit sexist, isn't what you're just saying? And we all laugh about it. So it's become I suppose it's a serious joke, but we're light-hearted about it. So I think one of the problems is if you become too serious about it, then things don't change because people reject it. So what's really important is we're light-hearted. We pick ourselves up. I pick myself up all the time. I'm really guilty of unconscious bias, and then I try to pick it up with other people, but in the nicest possible way. So. I'm re-educating a lot of our friends.
Okay, lovely. Well, listen, thank you, everybody, for all of that. We've got questions coming in. We are open to Q&A right now. If anybody would like to give us any questions, we've got just a couple of minutes left with which to do those. So I'm going to, I'll ask Kylie whether or not whether we've got anything that we could be asking. There is one here. We've got one question from Singapore that says, it's for you, Katie. What does the future hold for you? Is one question for you.
Well,
very personal question.
Yeah, I'm at a wonderful stage because I'm no longer full-time working. So and I'm doing all sorts of flexible, fun things, but still very engaged in the world of marketing. In terms of what it holds for me, I've become even more passionate about the women's cause. So when I was younger, I wasn't that active. Yeah, I wasn't an active feminist. But now, you know, I really believe I've got a platform, as Giles was saying earlier, and can affect change and help affect change. So Giles and I have got some thoughts about a second book. And I'd like to continue using this platform to get out there and to hopefully help other women and help change opinions.
Okay, and then just as we close, we've got another couple of questions. Pek Lian and Barbara, probably in that order because I dropped a question, Pek, to you earlier. What inspires you? We have a question here. Who inspires you? We talked about Wonder Women way up at the beginning of the thing. Who inspires you? Pek Lian.
Well, I think it's okay. It's interesting because the people who give me inspiration is not necessarily women. Yeah. So I had 3 really interesting learnings through my marketing life. One was my mentor, and he taught me something really precious at the start of my career. He says that in anything you do, you must be very clear about your goals. You can achieve it, you know, it's like if you plan to drive from Kuala Lumpur to Singapore, or you plan to go from Kuala Lumpur to Singapore, you can fly an airplane, you can take a boat, you can drive, and if you choose to drive, you can take the highway, you can take the coastal road. There is no right or wrong to that. But important thing is that if you know your goal, you will reach there eventually. You just need to find the most effective and fastest way, depending on what you want to do. But if you don't know your goal, you'll be floating somewhere. And that has been my, let's say, that has been my, the way I look through that lens in my life. And that person inspires me a lot. Yeah.
Great, that's great. And Barbara, who inspires you? Come on, what drives you? This long list. Your list of achievements is as long as Pek Lian's journey to Italy. Who inspires you?
Well, recently there's a very famous snowboarder in the Netherlands. She unfortunately she passed away, I think 2 weeks ago, and she was an Olympic snowboarder. And then she got very sick and she became Paralympic snowboarder. And all the time she made it to the top with all the big hurdles in her life, her perseverance and her extreme focus to get out there and come back again. Yeah, that was just amazing what she has shown. She passed away when she was 46, unfortunately, but I admire people who continue to go for their goals, and because it's always easy to say I quit, but to continue even the hurdles are getting bigger and bigger. I have endless respect.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for joining this today. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on today's webinar. I hope everybody has enjoyed the session. Mega thank you to our two authors, Giles and Katie. So and one of those rounds of applause to you, the sort of the noiseless version, and then to our wonderful friends Petley and Barbara. I've really enjoyed the journey that we've shared together. We value your feedback. We'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to complete the poll that's on your screen now, if you can. Unfortunately, hosts and panelists can't vote, which is a great shame, actually. We're going to have to fix that for next time, I think. But look, I just wanted to, while people are doing that, it would be very good just, I mean, my sort of summary of today, basically, I think, first of all, buy this book, okay? I think, as Giles said, it's dippable, it's snackable. It's a fantastic, you can read it cover to cover, or you can get back into it. So buy it. I learned today not to be wrong-footed by small things. I think people do get set back quite a lot. I've learned to give and take, to listen, respect what other people are saying. I love the Edmund Hillary quote, which we should all probably print out and put on our walls if that doesn't sound too binary. But we came back, big themes in the book: empathy, intuition, collaboration, building teams. You know, you guys are absolute past masters, all of you authors and panelists, at having done this. But I think things that we need to try and do, and things that maybe we could walk away with, things that we could do on Monday, as I like to say, would be, you know, we need to get men into the discussion without it being a discussion. You know, the idea of unconscious bias is not about a fight. It's not about you know, putting lines in the sand. It's about an ongoing discussion about sharing behaviours and skills, and then taking the badges off things in some ways. And I think this idea of using data to sort of drive and gently push that agenda is a very, very good one. So there are some things there I think that we could all do on Monday. So again, thank you for your brilliant comments, your contributions. Thank you for writing the book, Giles and Katie. I've loved it. And thank you, Petley and Barbara, for being so available and so just leaning into this whole discussion. It's been absolutely fantastic. So just to finish, the Marketing Society has a few upcoming events that may be of interest to people. First of all, next week on the 13th of May at 11 AM, streaming live from Hong Kong, Natalie Truong, who's the CMO of Mercer, will lead a conversation with two marketers on the role of the CMO, exploring how you can align with the CEOs and the executive teams to understand your business needs and enable long-term success for yourself and your company. It's a big theme of the Marketing Society, is the CMO to the CEO journey. So that will be a very, very valuable session there. It'll be a panel discussion like this one. You'll be able to ask questions, make friends, and then hopefully ask questions afterwards as well. Our monthly global conversation will also return on the 26th of May at 8 PM Singapore time. We'll look at balancing short versus long-term marketing, sales today, brand over time. Have a look at our website, which will be changing and upgrading very shortly, for more information and to book your place on that. And Kylie will probably put that up, as she just has done in the chat here. But again, thank you. I very much hope that you can join us again. But for now, thank you. Thank the panelists, thank the authors, and have a, wherever you are in the world, and I know it's very, very early, 5:30 start in the UK, but wherever you are, enjoy the rest of it. And thank you very much for everybody that took the time to tune in. We're very grateful. Thank you.